How are you, dude?
I'm great, man. How's things out there?
Good. Things are good, man. Really good. It's a little cloudy today, but not bad. I'm in Pacific Beach right now in San Diego. I just left the gym and had some sushi, and about to head home after this.
Nice, nice. So,
Yeah.
for people who don't know about your journey, like it's been crazy, So, why don't you give us some backstory on like how you kind of like, broke through everything that happened? Let's
Sure.
start from there.
Sure, dude. Take it from the top. So I graduated high school 2005, and I had two felonies and two misdemeanors pending, and I'd always wanted to be in the military. I was always kind of one of those kids that played guns and played war, bought the books and everything, watched Arnold movies and all that. And that was going to ruin my opportunity to really get into the military. And so, fortunately, one of the guys I was working construction with kind of pushed me off and said, "Hey, why don't you go to the Marine Corps recruiter and talk to him and see what they'll do?" And I was like, "Sick." Okay, I did. And then the recruiter was legit, and he's like, "I'll go to court with your attorneys and see if instead of going to since I was 17 I wasn't convicted because it ended up getting expunged. But
Mm,
when I committed the crime, allegedly, I was 17, so I wasn't tried as an adult. I was tried as a youthful offender. And
mm,
so, therefore, I turned around and was able to, instead of go to juvie, they let me join the Marine Corps, which was the best thing for me, the place that I really probably should have been. And it allowed me to take that same energy, that same, like, restlessness that as young men get a lot of times that age, and channel it into an environment that was very conducive for it and harnessing it, and like they're experts at that. So I went to the Marine Corps and I spent my 4 years there. I went to Iraq in 2007, 2008. Did lots of cool operations there, and then um, I got out and I went right back to construction. I'm originally from Oklahoma, so the only
mm,
reason I live in San Diego now is because I fell in love with it when I went to the Marine Corps. Like I went to boot camp out here, I went to School of Infantry out here, I spent time at Pendleton out here, and then I went to 29 Palms too. I was also on the East Coast, but I fell in love with San Diego, and I was like, "It's so sick, dude." I grew up watching Jesse James, on mode building bikes. I watched like all the hot rod shows and everything I could. Hart and Huntington. And
mm,
I was like, dude, sick. I wanna live out there on the West Coast. And so, um, anyways, fast forward. So when I got back home from Iraq or out of the military,
mm,
I went right into construction again, which is what my dad basically did, and my family. My grandfather owned his own construction company. My dad owns his own construction company, and so I started working for him, running equipment. Skid steers. Learned to weld, MIG weld, stick weld. Just basically running a dually and a flatbed and running a skid steer around and doing what I could.
mm,
And I was like disgruntled. I hated it, especially because I think that had a big impact on my life being in the military before. And so you go from doing some pretty cool stuff, you feels like life changing, world changing, whatever. It's very impactful to have these kind of things happen to your life when you're pretty young. I did personal security when I was in the Marine Corps. So like when we were overseas, I worked with like special operations dude. I worked with like generals. We did battalion commander, battalion sergeant majors, and that kind of stuff. And then I go back, and now I'm stuck inside of a skid steer. Just very angry. Kind of started getting disgruntled about it. I met my girlfriend at the time, my future wife, and I was going to the gym. I was always a meathead, so I was like always wanted to be big and jacked. So the Marine Corps is a great place for that. And then I kept going, and then at the gym when I had time off or when I could get off, I'd still go to the gym because I had no kids. Right, I'd go lift at 7:38, 9 o'clock at night when I got home from construction all day. And one of my buddies was like, "Dude, you should just start your own business." And I had all this doubt, I had all this fear. I was really concerned about like everything, all the fears, bankruptcy. What about this? What about all this? All these things. I made up all these stories in my head.
mm,
He was like, he kind of put it in perspective for me at that age, and he was like, "Well, what happens if like you were just in Iraq, dude? You could have gotten killed." And I was like, "Yeah, like that's what I expected. I don't give a shit. I didn't give a shit. I didn't have any kids. I'm a wife." And he's like, "Yeah, so you're worried about like what? What's the worst case scenario? I want you to play it out." And that's what he
mm,
told me. And so I did. I played it out. I'm like, worst case, bro. I had a house at that time. I'd bought a house too. So fortunately, I'd saved some money from the military, and I bought a house, which was a lot more affordable then because it was 2008,
mm,
um, or 2009ish, 10ish. That's when I was out. And then, so I was like, I guess I fucking have to go and foreclose on my house and live with my parents. Like that
mm,
sucks. It's embarrassing. And he's like, yeah, that's it. And I was like, oh, it kind of gave me an epiphany of like, that's it. Like, it's not as scary as it could have been, you know. And I
Mm,
think the further we go down in life, the harder that is to take those leaps, right? You get
mm,
kids, you get responsibilities, you get more cars, you get all this stuff, and then a lot of times our ego will get in the way of us taking these next risks because we're more worried about what other people will think if we fail more than we're worried about actually failing.
mm,
And so I did it, and I built a house and I sold it, and I made 45 grand on that house
mm,
after about 10ish months. And that's more money I made than I made an entire year at that time in
mm,
my life.
mm,
And I was like, holy shit, I see how like my brain just like it opened up, it expanded, right? Like
mm,
money can be made in other ways than trading my time per hour because I was working per hour, or even salary. And I was like, this is how people can get rich. Like it was just like I got really hungry. And so I just doubled down on that business, and then eventually got to the point where I was building high-end custom homes. I was doing, multi-million dollar houses in Oklahoma, which are amazing, 5,000 plus square foot and whatnot. And the problem that I ran into then was I was making good money, but I'm working directly with clients because I started doing high-end client stuff. I started doing full-blown customs. So the selections of the tile, we have designers coming in from Dallas. We have architects coming in from Dallas or anywhere that these people wanted them. There's some of them are like CFOs for oil and gas companies, doctors, lawyers, things like that. Show homes, magazines, and stuff. And it was really fun. It fed my creativity, but it was painful in the circumstances of like retail clients and managing people's emotions and the relationship during those builds,
mm,
and also their biggest asset most of the time. Like if they're a
mm,
professional W-2 earner, or they even own their own business, a lot of times their house is like, this is our forever home, so everything has to be perfect. And when people see construction being done, a lot of mistakes are made because it's humans, and then they
mm,
see those. If they would have bought the house from me, they would have never saw those. But throughout the process, they would see the Johnny, broke the door, or this wasn't correct, and we had to fix it. And we had to change the paint, blah blah blah. And so it's very volatile in people's emotions, and it got progressively worse. And then like I said, I was making great money, but I knew like this isn't what I wanted. So I started reading books and started learning more, and I was always hungry to learn more. And I started reading like Rich Dad Poor Dad. I started reading like Grant Cardone books. I started reading like whatever I get my hands on, like Extreme Ownership from Jocko Willink, like Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, and like all of these things. And so I was like all in on like just like there's got to be more than this. Like what's the next level? What's the next thing I can do?
mm,
And so real estate investing really spoke to me because I was like, okay, you mean I can? I would watch like the builders, right? We all had like brand new F-250 Platinums and the nice new house because they're just going to sell it in a couple years. And I lived that lifestyle, and you're just living like from project to project to project. You're on the country clubs, you're doing the things, you look like a bigwig, but the reality is the stress is like super overwhelming.
mm,
And so I would find the people that were like the investors. And I was like, what do you do, bro? Like, you're wearing flip flops. You don't give a shit. You can do whatever you want. Like, nobody cares if you have neck tats. You're not trying to sell yourself as like at any of that. It just doesn't matter. Like,
mm,
so I was like, I want that. That's true freedom. Like, to
mm,
have a business that makes money, it's just based off of the logics of it, the
mm,
numbers. The numbers make sense or they don't. Like that's it. I was like, damn, that's so simple. Instead of me trying to sell you and work with your wife and your family, and this is your dream house, blah blah blah. So I doubled down, and my wife and I, we had two houses on the market at the time. This is like 2018 ish. And I had two $1 million spec houses, which is super expensive for me. And I was just like hemorrhaging cash. And I still I went and put $52,000 on two different company credit cards that I had, and I didn't have the money. Like it wasn't in the account, bro. Like I'm gonna have to stretch these fucking things out or whatever. And I did that because I needed to learn more information. And what I did is I bought into a 2-year education program for real estate investing. And this is before like any Instagram coaches or mentorships or communities were out on like YouTube and shit.
mm,
And so I would go out to these classes once a quarter in like Florida and Texas, and I would just sit there. My wife and I went, and we went for like 2 days, write all the notes down, learn all the information, go back and apply it. Do it again, do it again, do it again. And it eventually got to the point like around 2020. We all know what happened in 2020.
mm,
The lumber got more expensive. People still wanted to buy houses because they had more money and more cash in the economy than they have ever had. Um, and so I was getting all the clients, and I just couldn't fulfill on it, and I couldn't promise them or give them a timeline of when like the lumber would be there, the construction would be done, if they could get the brick, if they couldn't get the brick, if they could get the meatless stove or not the meatless stove or the wolf or whatever. And I was like, and so stress got even worse. but we were already making money as real estate investors now. So I had accumulated like, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 rental properties. I was kind of flipping a couple on the side if I could sell them. And my wife, she got her license, but then she ended up wholesaling a property, or I think, yeah, she wholesaled the property, and she made like 20 grand on it in less than like 30 days.
Mm.
And I did some quick math, and I'm making like 15% on $1 million house, you know, or between 10 and 15. And I was like, dude, the quick math, like she made that in 30 days. What if you did like five more? Like there's a scalable opportunity here. And
Mm.
so I did. I was like, fuck this. So I just stopped taking clients, and I was like, I'm going to devote my energy. She kind of beta tested it, like went all in, because I still had the same fears from not starting my business to starting my first business. And then the next leap was like, stopping the fucking cash flow or the business that you just spent like 8 to 10 years on,
Mm.
and be like moving to the next one. That's a big leap and a big change too. Just as much
Mm.
fear, and because it's not like I could sell it. You know, it's
Right.
not a sellable product or a sellable business. There's no way. And so I just stopped taking clients. I doubled down on real estate investing, and then we continued to do more and more. And we got up to doing like between 30 and 40 um, like takedown properties a year. And then we were also doing like between like 5 and 10 flips per month that we would try to get out there. And if we couldn't sell those, we would put them in our portfolio. And so we created a little system and we built a machine for it. Um, and it just kept doing better and better.
Mm.
And so that we did that. But at the same time, my next mistake, well, I say my mistake just because of what I wanted in my life,
Mm.
was I went and bought an office, and I had like a 3,300 square foot office. I put all the people in it, and I remodeled it. I made it like, you know, what you'd think you needed. And I realized after I had done it about 6 months in, all these people in there, I'm like, I got new people training in there. I got all these people I'm responsible for. And it was almost the same responsibility like that I had when I started the building, because now I have to be there at 7 when they're there, and I don't want to leave until after they leave to set the example. And then I just felt trapped and imprisoned by myself in my own business. And so we started unwinding it. And I was
Mm.
like, you know what? We do well with this. We can do this virtually. We can have a team virtually. Let's fucking lease the office out. Let's sell the house. Now, this was like our third custom home. So we built our own homes, you know, sell the house, and let's move to San Diego and or where we want. And we looked at like Boca Raton, we looked at like Scottsdale, we looked at San Diego, and so we ultimately settled and decided to go here. And that's when I feel like everything started coming together, because I feel like I was on my path. Like I was like really being honest with what I wanted, and then I was actually going after it instead of building a business to make a bunch of money to hopefully one day go live my life. And then like things fall into place when that kind of stuff happens. And so
Mm.
that's my long-winded story, man.
Wow, wow. When you look back in time and you see how you started and where you are now, what three tips could you give people like young entrepreneurs that you wish you would have had that knowledge back then, or maybe you felt the pain? Like, what are the three tips you could kind of give people?
What I tell people now, and I coach a lot of people on this, is the thing is to gain clarity on what you truly want without any objections of like what you think's logical or you can make happen today. And
Mm.
so it's the classic think bigger, but it's hard to think big when you're drowning where you're at. But you really do have to gain clarity on what you're really wanting. And I think so many of us at a young age, we give up on all these adolescent dreams, these adolescent goals. I call them adolescent just because of the age.
Mm.
But it's like we knew what we wanted to do. Like I knew I wanted to be a warrior in the military and go after that stuff, right? But my parents could have easily talked me out of it and been like, you need to go to college. College is the smart thing. And people go, shit, they're right. And so they give up. And that's the first step. And then the next step and the next step. And so if you have true clarity and you're being called by God or you're being called by a higher power to go obtain these things and to go chase this life, don't neglect those things that you've been given. Those are gifts for you. And you need to really gain the clarity on what that looks like. And then you need to figure out the math backwards on what will give you that life. Because too many times, like myself, you go chase the money because you're thinking that that's going to get you one day to trade it in to have that life. And it's not the case. So
Mm.
that's one tip, gain clarity. Second tip is once you do, chase that, go after that. And the third thing that couples with that is definitely like being honest and self-reflecting and being like, am I the person that's capable of that? Because if you're a ditch digger or if you're someone starting out and you don't have the skills, then you have to figure out what you need in order to get there and who you need to become.
Mm. One of the things that I admire is, you stay in, peak condition all the time. Give us some insight on like how you were balancing the business, staying in the condition. What are some tips you can give,
Yeah.
performance wise?
There's definitely times where it's going to struggle, where you're going to fall short because I don't believe in like perfect balance. It's just not how it works. Um, but it was an outlet for me, right? The gym was just a non-negotiable, or being at least in a certain shape, and it was an outlet for me. I may have looked past like being shredded during my early 20s and having kids and whatnot, but like I definitely still hit the gym more for my mindset and more for my escape, and it's more of my hobby than anything. And so the trick is just like falling in love with the process of continuing to go and falling in love with the people that you see at the gym, having your people, your community, whatever it is. And then another huge thing that's really important is when you get bored, you're going to get bored. Like the routine sucks, the training schedule, whatever, but whatever you can do to continue to stay somewhat into any kind of exercise, right? Like when I got bored of bodybuilding style routine workouts and shit, I went to CrossFit, and then I fell in love with that. And then I've also done jujitsu. I ended up getting my blue belt. Now I'm took 4 years off, and I'm back at the jujitsu gym. And this morning I was boxing, and then I lifted weights. Like do whatever it takes. Like depending on where you're at and what your goals are, you got to just stay active with that and stay interested. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, you
Mm.
guys have supplements, right? And so even as psychological as it can be, and I know this from my whole entire 21 plus years of working out, is like, dude, get the new pre-workout, try the thing out, try whatever it is, because it's going to get you excited. It's going to get you excited to go to the gym again. There's nothing wrong with like self-sabotaging yourself in a good way.
Mm. Are you taking any supplements? Can you give us some insight on that?
Yeah, so I tried. I'm pretty limited more now than, but I just run basic TRT. I'm in my late 30s now, so I do TRT, and then I like to some of the peptides like NAD, some of the IGF ones. You know, some of those things like, what else? Yeah, NAD is a good one. CJC, BPC 157, and then when it comes to like over the counter type stuff, something that is like I got an energy drink in my car. I'll utilize those for pre workouts or afterwards.
Mm.
And then creatine's usually a pretty good staple for the most part. And then, you know, protein powders, I think of more as supplementation at the beginning when I was smaller, trying to get bigger. I would hit
Mm.
those to hit my goals, to hit my macros, to hit my protein intakes. And when you're on a real tight diet, they come in handy. But I don't think you should ever lean on those. I think you should always try to ingest as much real food as possible and supplement exactly what they are when it comes to proteins.
Mm. You know, I've had really good success in my business. You know, we've been in business 23 years, and I've had a few Marines that have come and worked with me, and they're exceptional workhorses. Have you had Marines work with your team, and how's that been like in your business?
Yeah, great. Um, I see two sides of it. Like, what happens a lot of times when people get out of the military, and you can attest to this, is entrepreneurship is definitely harder in a different aspect. Business ownership and stuff like that's harder. So, like you said, good workhorses, but um, independent thinking is super important, and the military can definitely teach you that. But it can also, the longer you stay more in a government position or something to where you get an average, you know, a base pay, and this is stuck here, the mindset is hard to unstick the older the person gets.
Mm.
Special operations dudes a lot of times are a little better at that, but they either go one of both ways. Same with Marines. It's like after they get out, they like really struggle and try to figure out their path and their purpose because their identity is connected to what they were before. Or when you get out, you like can accelerate and you can utilize those tools as the next step to get to the next thing.
Mm. Was there tools that you think you know helped you in your business from being a Marine? Something you could share with us quick, maybe that you know maybe people can even apply to everyday life.
1,000%. So the biggest thing is what I see most of the time in the civilian world and the world out here is just that people view hard as like something that will stop them. And in the
Mm.
Marine Corps and any type of special operations or whatever, it's like good. You're just gonna figure it out. Like there's never not like when you're in a combat situation or you're in an environment or something happens and you're trying to go down, you know, your main route and you have to take a tertiary or a secondary plan. Then it's like the mission still has to get done. And so the Marine Corps is damn good at training people to just fucking get it done regardless of the circumstances. And so that is one of the most massive things that I would attribute to my success. It's like, I don't care how long it takes. You know, you may be 10 times better than me. You may be smarter than me, you may be faster than me, you may be better looking than me. You may have more rich parents. You may have more opportunity than me, whatever it may be, rhetorically speaking to anybody, but it doesn't matter because I'm still going to continue and I'm going to do this so hard and so much that I'm still going to get the mission accomplished.
Mm. Was there anything that stands out when you look back being in the Marines that you know you really mentally had to you know get yourself in the game like it was it pushed you, like something that really like you were like, oh shit, like, give us some insight on that.
I think it's funny because I was in so young, and then when I got out, I didn't really know what I had learned because I was so
Mm,
young and I absorbed it. And then I look back now, like I utilize a lot of the things that I was taught then, that I took for granted out of the military. I'll give you a funny example. Like when you're in boot camp, they teach you how to shave your face. They teach you how to wipe your ass. They teach you how to tie your shoe. Like everything, they treat you. Everybody's the same. You may have the best parents in the world that taught you all the hygiene and how to dress and how to walk and how to talk, and then you have other people in there that maybe grew up in underneath a trailer home and they don't have a freaking clue. And that's not even being an asshole or it's joking. It's just true. Like people come from different walks of life, and so what I realized was that how many people don't have those gifts, and so the Marine Corps gives you a very, very good baseline of self disciplines and hygiene and things that need to get done, and then, like I said, mission orientation, which is huge.
mm. I watched on TV. I don't know if they still do this, where they you jump underwater and then you play like a sport or something. Like, well, I
Yeah,
don't know
yeah.
what. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, the people definitely do that for. There's actually a place down here that does that. It's a lot more. I'm not a huge fan of the water. I sink like a rock, but
yeah.
there's definitely people that do that to stay in shape and whatnot.
Yeah. So, one of the things, for me, it's like when I saw the military training, I was like, oh shit, like, because I'm not a big water person either. And like me going underwater and staying underwater and trying to play a sport was like, that would be like the one challenging aspect of like
Yeah,
for me where I'm like, oh fuck, like I don't want to do this. Like, I
yeah.
just don't want to do this. Was there ever a time when like you can think back when you're like, fuck, I do not want to do this?
Yeah, all the time. I mean, so like it's a funny dichotomy with being in the military, right? I got myself in trouble at a young age, and because I was anti-authority, I'm an entrepreneur because I'm pretty anti-authority. Probably more so it's like I just want to do what I want to fucking do when I want to do it, and like so that's also I've taken that and utilized that and harnessed it into being successful instead of being a degenerate, which is a very fine line for most of us. If you're driven and you're an entrepreneur, you're probably the same, which
Mm,
you are, and
mm,
so when I was in the military, taking command or taking orders from somebody that I knew was much less qualified, but just because they were higher ranking. So that was honestly a lot harder, and probably also what pushed me to realize that being a good leader isn't just being the boss, or being a good leader isn't just being the one that's in control or in charge or makes the most money. Being a good leader is actually being a good leader.
powerful. Let me ask you a question because I really enjoy reading myself, and I know you mentioned some books. If you had to pick one book that you were going to give, say, your son, and just one book, what would that book be?
I think right now the book that's tough. One book would be really tough.
Mm,
I think books come to us in phases of life that are needed, right? I've read books that I was like scratching my head at the beginning, and I'm like, business owners told me this was a good book, and it fucking didn't make any sense.
mm,
And then I would read it later, years later, and I'd be like, dude, I understood everything, right? Like that
mm,
that finally clicked. And so it depends on where they're at. But like for example, like if it was my kiddo, and they're like obviously young enough to be my kiddo, so they're my kiddo. I would say somebody starting out, they need to have those first clicks of like epiphanies. And
mm,
so Rich Dad Poor Dad's a good book to explain like money wise, and it's a good storytelling book to understand assets versus liabilities. And then so is Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. Those are great books to kind of understand like at least the responsibility lies with you and you can
mm,
solve all the problems. But if you're sitting there and you're being a victim all the time, or you're blaming your circumstances or blaming other people or blaming the economy, then you can't control those things. So therefore you're basically giving up. But if you're saying, you know what, I'm going to do this regardless, then that right there, you become the solution, and then action behind it will change your life. And so I would
mm.
say Extreme Ownership would probably be the best one.
Who motivates you? Like who, when you get up in the morning and or there's something in the day and you think about somebody, who would that person be?
It's me. I motivate myself, man. It's not like
Nice.
motivation. It's just like I tell people this. I'm like, you think I'm hard on you if you worked with me or been around me or whatever? It's like I'm like fucking 10 times harder on myself, bro. Like I'm way more mad if I didn't get this done or do this, and I always feel behind. And
Mm,
so it's hard as an entrepreneur. I'm sure you can relate. Like you're chasing that 5 year, 10 year version of yourself. You feel like you're not there yet because you're always looking so far down the road at where you feel like you should be, that it's easy to get into like a negative mindset. And so while staying grateful for where you're at now, but at the same time for having still keeping that drive and that hunger to always push forward and to reach that 5, 10 year version of you down the road. And
mm,
so like, to answer your question, it's me because like I feel behind. I wake up feeling behind. I feel like I'm not where I want to be right now, right? There's always another glass ceiling to break.
Mm.
It's
Tell
addictive.
us tell us a little bit about your daily routine, like a Monday. Like what's that look like? You get up at 5 a.m., 6 a.m. Give us kind of like a quick overview.
Yeah, sure, dude. Super simple. Like, get up 5 a.m. I've changed it up right now, but the majority of the time, like the staple is just to wake up at 5 a.m., get to the gym, come back home, make breakfast with my kids, talk to them, hang out with them, spend some family time with them. And then I get them ready for school, take them to school myself, come back home, and then get after it again. Usually, yeah. Sometimes I'll jump in the pool to like as my shower because it's kind of still chilly here. The waters are still cold, and
Mm.
so it's not like technically a cold plunge, but it's still cold enough to like shock you a bit. And then I just get right into it. But what will
Mm.
happen, and at the beginning, especially when you're growing a business, like I said, you do have to sacrifice a bit. Like what was less important than me going to the gym was me waking up and figuring out how I was going to pay the bills. And so it was
Mm.
really important for me to wake up at 3 or 4 in the morning if I couldn't even freaking sleep to get the work done. But right now, I wake up, I go work out, I come home, I eat breakfast with my kids. I either if it's the weekend, we go hang out, we go do something. If it's the weekdays, I'll take them to school because they're in elementary school. Um, and then I come back home and I work with my wife and or right, I just worked out with one of the guys that works with me in my companies now, and then we had lunch together. So that's still work. It all like is encumbering. And then the
Mm.
evening I go to bed. I have a set bedtime too. I think that some people don't think about it. They're like, "Oh, I wake up early." I'm like, "Cool," but in order to continue to do that, you need to set a bedtime for yourself just as much as you need to set a wake up time.
What's your set bedtime?
And my alarm goes off to go to bed at 9:30.
Nice.
And so sometimes, I mean, I'll start malingering myself up to my bed and start brushing my teeth. I'm usually tired by then if I wake up at 5.
Nice. And did you have anything today that you kind of wanted to touch upon or talk about at all?
No, I mean, I appreciate you guys having me on here. Um, Any of y'all want to follow me, obviously, on Instagram or anybody that's ever going to see this. And then, check out my YouTube channel. We're trying to pump the YouTube channel up and continue to do that. And I just love being able to share my experiences and also help anybody that I can with those aspects.
Hmm. Did you have any questions for me?
Yeah. So, what would you guys say, like from your entrepreneurial experience and having this business for as long as you have, what do you feel are, what were the points in your life where you were like, what was the most recent point after 23 years of having this specific company? What is your most recent point of like, you felt like you broke through the next level?
Hmm. It's a good question. I mean, some of the signings that we've had, I won't say the most recent, but I mean, when I signed Dave Batista, right? I mean, that was
Huge.
exploded. Like that took my brand to like a whole new level. Like the orders were so massive and the attention like that this guy could get was unbelievable. So, looking back, that was the one thing that literally tripled my business. That one signing was like maybe even more. Like it just ignited
Yeah.
everything. So I guess, having that same sort of thinking big, and obviously we've had quite a few signings over the years, from Khabib. We signed Khabib for a couple of years. We had Anderson Silva. We had Batista. We've had quite a Rolodex of pretty big names, right? And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
guess each time we kind of like would sign somebody of that caliber, the bar would kind of be raised, right? And you know, indirectly, I mean, recently, I mean, a breakthrough that's happened. I mean, not that I really did a lot for it because I'm not going to say I have. Is when these tariffs got put on, our Canadian business has exploded like literally like we were trucking along doing great, but like now it's like now I'm having the conversation where it's like I don't even know who's drinking all this stuff. Like it's like
Yeah.
like it's like I'm like holy smokes, like it's that much of an impact for my Canadian business.
That's awesome.
So I mean that's just kind of a little bit of luck, maybe. That's
Yeah.
just a little bit of luck for now, right? I mean, who
It's
knows what
it's
the
luck,
future.
but it's coupled to the 20 something years of experience and pushing on the ball so hard.
Mm, mm, it's true.
So
When you look back, and when you started, what if you were to tell yourself something like that you could change, what would that be? Like what would you change looking back if you could change one thing?
I don't think I would change anything, to be honest. Like, I wouldn't change anything because I needed the lessons that I was taught in order to get me here. Obviously, like in a hypothetical scenario, I'd be like, well, I wish I would have learned it faster. I wish I would have not took so much time to quit those things. And if I could change, I guess anything, I would change like what I tell people as I like go to gain more clarity and believed in myself of what I wanted and my path and like the clarity on what kind of life I really wanted instead of just I got into building homes because I was in construction. Like and I tell people this about real estate too. It's like I don't like I'm not in love with houses or in real estate. Like some people may like that. I like to live my life. I want to freaking work out. I want to drive cool cars. I want to live cool places. I want to experience the world. Like so to me, like experiences are very important, whether it's driving a cool car, whatever makes you feel cool or whatever you like, or going somewhere on a vacation or having horses, whatever it is to somebody, you know, figure out what's going to help you get closer to that quicker
Mm,
versus trying to build a business to sacrifice your life now. It's kind of like the old, like, I'll work until I'm 65, then I'll retire, and then I'll do the thing. And so I wish I would have recognized that I could have been a better version of me and a more version of me earlier instead of having to feel like I needed to lock into a traditional, logical business environment.
mm. You know, I'm not really that familiar with the US real estate, but obviously you're in San Diego. Are you doing real estate or helping people in other areas? I'm assuming, you know, you are. So, you know, if you were to give a piece of advice, you know, do you see an area, let's say, in the United States that you feel like would be a great, you know, up and coming? I know there's probably many, but I mean, if you had to pick one, a lot of people talk about, you know, Austin, Texas. What's your take on this?
It's going to depend on where they're at, right? If they're just starting out, I tell people to start in their backyard unless their market's like complete garbage because you just have to get the reps. It's like just making sure that you go to the gym, like just go to the gym, right? Like people come up with all the excuses or they'll have all these voices in their head about what people think about them when they go to the gym. No one's thinking about you. And so you need to start where you're at and you need to start engaging in those, and then that's going to allow you to crawl, and then it's going to allow you to walk, and then you can decide where you want to run. If you want to get into commercial, you should still like. I've had people be like, oh yeah, I see all these guys online get into multifamily, or I see all these guys get into commercial, and I said, well, how many deals have you done? And they're like, oh, I've never done anything. I was like, do you own your own house? They're like, no. I'm like, okay, so you don't understand anything about debt or banking or any relationships. You have no money tangible. I've never done this. You should just start. Like, start with something of your own, build your own, and then you can go and do something else, right? So at the
Mm,
very beginning, there's not a specific market, but there's about two plays when it comes to, we'll call it single family real estate.
mm,
Is I'm in more of an equity market here, meaning like the property values go up in California a lot faster, a lot more. They appreciate more, and so therefore you may not make a bunch of cash flow when you buy property with debt, but you're going to make a larger return on them when you sell them in 5, 10, 20 years.
mm,
And then like for Oklahoma, Texas, most places in Texas, other states like that, you're going to get more of a cash flow, but your appreciation, the value of the property is not going to go up near as fast, right? You're not going to triple the property price in nowhere, Oklahoma, or even in downtown Oklahoma City, in the most affluent area. But you could
mm.
triple the property price being pretty close to the ocean here in San Diego. So,
Just saying, right? Just saying.
yeah, yeah,
All
supply and
right.
demand.
All right, bro. Well, listen, thanks a lot for coming on Perform Podcast. You're a great guest, man. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. I appreciate you, man. You guys keep kicking ass.
All right, man. Talk to you soon.
Awesome. See you, bro.
Thanks.